Welcome to the MLB Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guys Mo Nawara in the Midwest, and we got Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We are rolling along here on a Tuesday night slate in the MLB. Just a reminder, we are bringing you those evening and nighttime games to make sure we can get those out to you guys in time. So make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us each and every weekday of this MLB season. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, it's Tuesday night, so it's a big night slate for sure. I think I count 14 games here, run through the lines quickly. Brewers are minus 175 at Pirates. Padres about minus 170 at the Reds. The Rockies plus 145 at Phillies. Marlins minus 130 at Nats. O's plus 220 at Yankees. Red Sox plus 160 at the Blue Jays. Royals plus 130 at White Sox. Cubs plus 140 at Braves. Tigers plus 120 at Twins. The Mets and Cardinals in a toss-up. Astros and Rangers toss-up. Guardians plus 130 at Angels. The Dodgers, again, huge favorites, minus 200 at the D-backs. And then Cy Rodon and the Giants, minus 275 at home against the A's. But even money on that run line, just saying, 1.5 runs when you've got the Cy lefty going. I think where we're starting, though, is the dramatic, the miraculous Mets, we'll call them, after they pulled off this 2-out, 9th inning, 5-run rally to beat the Cardinals last night and pay off for anybody who followed us on backing Scherzer. Certainly backed that under in the first 5 innings as neither team scored until late. But I feel even more confident about the Mets in this particular pitching matchup with Bassett going, who we really liked last time out, but he was going up against Rodon, who we just mentioned outpitched him, and the Giants got to him. I think this is a much better matchup against the Cardinals, who hit fastballs really well, but are the 9th worst rating so far against curveballs in terms, and they're a righty heavy lineup. So Bassett can break off that slider and that curve. Coming in, his first 2 starts before he faced the Giants, he was pitching extremely well with a good ground ball rate, a 160 BABIP, 31% K rate. He's a really solid pitcher. And I think there's some momentum to derive for the Mets from this rally here going into the next day. St. Louis is only hitting 239. We've seen unders hit consistently as they just got back from Miami. And that experiment with Jordan Hicks starting, he went further than we thought, 3 innings, 1 earned, and then they did not go to Dakota Hudson. The 2 middle relievers, Burhig and Aaron Brooks, gave up 4 more runs to cough up that game. So a little more of an unknown when you're talking about Bassett, who's kind of money for the most part in terms of giving you 2 runs over 6 innings, a quality start. And we don't know what St. Louis is going to have to trot out there in the middle innings. I think you're getting some value in a toss-up line with the Mets.
Yeah, I think so too. Definitely liking the Mets here. I think you kind of touched on what concerns me here with the Cardinals. It's what they followed Jordan Hicks with last time. So I liked it better when they were piggybacking him with Dakota Hudson, but they didn't use Dakota Hudson, who's kind of like a below average starter. And when you use a below average starter as your like bulk man after like an opener, their stuff is going to play up. They can throw harder in a shorter stint. They're not going to be seen as many times by the opposing lineup. It helps them quite a bit. So I like that setup a lot. But then they used Dakota Hudson as a regular starter, I think, in the next game or maybe the game after. I can't exactly recall. But they followed Jordan Hicks with a couple of kind of poor middle relievers. Something Drew Verhagen and A. Brooks, not even sure who that is. And then Whitgren from Cleveland last year, who's pretty bad. So if that, and this was in a game where they were down 1 and then allowed another unearned run by Verhagen. So they were only down 2. So it was a close game. A lot of times managers like to use their worst relievers when they're kind of down. But if the game's close, I think they're still incentivized to try to get guys out there who are going to get outs. And if the plan is kind of similar here against Bassett, who is actually really good and honestly may have turned the corner to borderline elite last year, I do like the Mets here up to, I think they're probably bettable up to minus 120.
Yeah, and I mean, if as Mets fans, we'll probably be able to tell you too. While following along with Bassett towards the end of last year too, he started to make that turn. So I don't think it should be too much of a surprise that he keeps it going. I mean, facing Rodon the way he pitched last time as well, and that Giants is going to be consistent for them. So can't really hold that against him. And I think he should have a decent success, better than on the other side there for Hicks and the Cardinals. So let's move on to a team that you seem to be adopting, Mo, where I think we're waiting for you to put on a Rockies hoodie potentially next show, as they are the only team that seem to be bringing you joy right now, and the way that you're able to continue riding them. So are we going to continue that trend here on Tuesday night?
Yeah, not today, not yesterday, I guess, but it's okay. It was a little unlucky. For Kyle Freeland, very good start, 1 earned run, 7 strikeouts, but his defense let him down. So they lost in kind of a hail of unearned runs there. Going right back to the Rockies at another big price, plus 150. I'm seeing out there right now. Herman Marquez, who is actually really good and not just like a guy who I think is underrated like Freeland. Marquez is actually really good. And he's facing Zach Eflin, Zach Eflin is an okay pitcher. But I kind of don't think he's got it right now. He seems to be kind of still trying to get a feel for his command. His zone rate is way down at 45%, which is like on the border of where you can kind of even survive. And then his called strikes are at 2/3 of his career number right now, which is kind of a number I look at as like a little bit of a proxy for command. So I think he just doesn't have the feel right now. And I just facing a superior pitcher, even though the Phillies definitely do have a better offense. I just don't see how the Rockies can be quite this big of dogs. I had the Phillies more like minus 130. So that's a price that I'm also seeing out there. So definitely do some line shopping on this one. I think if you can get around plus 150, it's pretty good for the Rockies.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the name of the game with the Rockies. And obviously what you're searching for, why you keep coming back to them, is that value. But I'm going to move on with you, Nate, to a game that maybe you don't have quite the same value. But I know you feel strongly about those Padres taking on pretty much the worst team in baseball in Cincy in this one.
Yeah, the Reds have certainly regressed in a hurry after surprising Mo's Braves in the first series there for a little bit, but they're in a complete rebuild here. And now they're 30th and yeah, pretty much pick the category, average runs, K rate, run differential. And they're facing a guy who I definitely would want to back with some props if you don't like the minus 170 price for the Padres. But Joe Moosegrove, I guess his nickname still Moose, from his Pirates days, looking real sharp to start the season for sure. 21 Ks, 1 walk. And Mo talked about that called strike rate as a sign of command. He has a 22.5% called strike rate. Combine that with swinging strike, it's 35%. And he's getting guys to chase at a career high rate at the 40% outside the zone swing rate. So against a pretty bad Reds lineup, you expect him to be in command and spot the Padres a pretty good lead. They're going up against Raver Sanmartin, who's not really hitting 90 and not missing many bats. He was kind of an unknown southpaw coming in here, but yeah, so far not so good in terms of just giving up a lot of hard contact and against a Padres team that's been pretty patient and pretty dangerous against lefties so far.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about Sanmartin, how I thought he might be a little bit underrated, actually. But it's just people just keep hammering him. So I think maybe the scouting report is telling me something here, which is as a prospect, he was basically an all command guy and they gave his fastball a grade of 30, which for people who are not familiar with scouting, it's significantly below average. Like 35 is like borderline major league quality. 40 is like you're below average, but maybe playable. 30 is like not even a number you see very often. So he's got a 30 fastball. And I think that's just like the problem. He doesn't have a major league fastball, so he's just not really able to get major league hitters out in any sort of consistent way. So I know the price is pretty high, but I think it's a little short, honestly. I think if you can get around minus 160, it's fine. Even probably playing the run line is fine in a high run environment there in the Red Stadium against a bad pitcher. I'm usually not recommending run lines, but for a road team in this situation, it's probably okay.
Yeah, well, so let's finish up then with another game where we're actually not necessarily in love with either pitchers here. As we move to that Houston and Texas game, we've got Odorizzi and Taylor Hearn, a couple guys already struggling mightily this season. So I don't know. I don't think either of you are really looking at a total of over 9.5 runs, although that's where the juice is at minus 105. If you want to take that big ballpark there and see if they can slap it around a bit. But I don't know, Nate, where do you start with this one? I guess who's worse here or who's less worse on the mounds?
Yeah, maybe some Astros props, runs from the Astros for sure. They haven't been up to par against lefties this season so far, but I mean, they haven't faced a guy who's getting hammered like this. 17% barrel rate at this point for Hearn, giving up he does have a high K rate, but that indicates that, the 471 BABIP is not too unlucky, that he's just getting hammered. And yeah, you're not going to strike out the Astros too much. So that K rate, not going to help him too much. Odorizzi, I think where Mo's leaning is the Astros are better and they're going to be willing to yank Odorizzi earlier and then go to that pretty good bullpen. And that's why we think they can cover, they can win this one. But if anything, I'm leaning towards just a lot of runs being scored at down in Texas in that heat.
Yeah, I do think the Astros might have a little bit of value. I know that they've struggled a little bit to hit the lefties so far, but man, this was the number one offense in baseball against lefties last year. So, I mean, they only lost Correa, and I guess Altuve's out too right now. So they're down a couple pieces, but I just still think they're better than Texas everywhere in this game. Offense, defense, bullpen. And even starting pitching, I downgraded Odorizzi. He's really struggling. But I mean, this guy still put up, I think like a 4.1 Sierra or something last year. So I don't think he's quite as bad as Hearn. Hearn is really bad, I think. Although I bumped him up a little bit, but I still honestly have Odorizzi ahead of him. So two comparable pretty bad pitchers, though. And then, like I said, just a way better offense and defense and bullpen for the Astros. I mean, this Texas bullpen, what they're doing, unfortunately, to the Astros tonight, notwithstanding. Thanks, guys, but they're really bad. They've really been awful, like bottom 5 every category you look.
Well, thanks for pulling through on this show with us, Mo. I know today was a rough run for you personally. I do think that, I would find some pretty good value on this Stros game as well, especially with the 6th best ERA from their bullpen, as we've seen so far from them this season. So I think even if Odorizzi does get shelled, there's more likelihood that the Stros can come in and settle things down than the other side. So that is all the time we have for you guys on this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us as we bring you these videos each and every weekday of the MLB season. And until we see you next, happy betting.